kind of any type of conflict can go to the centers. So we're happy to be here and have you welcome us, and hopefully we can be a helpful resource to you all.
I wondered if we could share the PowerPoint, and that means one of us, either Liz or I, have to be the co-host.
Actually, Nicole, I think you can share it without being a co-host.
Yeah, give it a try. I think I have it enabled that way. And also, just so everybody knows, one of our hope is, you know, we can't always get everyone we want on these meetings. So we do record them. So I did start recording just so everyone is aware, and I am seeing your screen here.
Great, thank you.
Excellent.
All right, Nicole, you want to start?
I was going to say we're NYSDRA. We're in the New York State Dispute Resolution Association, and we're going to tell you a little bit about us as NYSDRA, a little bit about how we got to be where we are now, and then I would like to kind of highlight the 3 programs you're here to hear about. So, Liz, do you want to take over a little bit and tell them a little bit about?
Sure. Would you mind doing it in the presentation view?
I don't mind at all.
Great. There should be
I know.
slideshow to present.
Yeah.
Go to the slideshow.
Yep.
Nope.
Slide mastered. Sorry about that. No.
No, Nicole, there should be something to go to slideshow.
There we go.
And hit.
All right. There we go.
Okay, so hi, sorry about that. So we're the New York State Dispute Resolution Association. We are the association of the community dispute resolution centers in New York State, and we serve to, similar to your group, advocate, promote community resources, and we really work closely with the court system as well as state agencies. We have certain contracts for due process services. So Nicole, next slide, please. So my name is Elizabeth Vanisdale, the Director of Operations at NYSDRA. I help with the contract compliance and all of our operations. And Nicole, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Nicole Jenkins, and I run the disability mediation program. So that's early intervention mediation, special education mediation that includes the 3 to 5-year-old range and the 5 through senior and high school range. And then also the Access VR mediation program, which includes pre-employment and training range 14 to 18 and adult Access VR, which is 18 and up. So those are the 3 grants that we help the CDRCs around the state run.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nicole. And as we know, there's no shortage of conflict in our world. I don't know about you, but my dog is always trying to chase squirrels. So this cartoon is a great kind of view of, you know, what a mediator's role is to get to some type of common ground. So, for example, if you can't read the text, first can we agree that it is a big backyard? So I'm sure, you know, as advocates, family members, parents, trying to navigate the disability services system, whatever level you're in, there's a lot of conflict and a lot of challenges that you overcome. So hopefully this can be a helpful resource for you. Nicole, next slide. All right, so what is alternative dispute resolution? ADR is a type of process where people can resolve disputes without a trial rather than going to court. And the processes are generally confidential, less formal and less stressful than traditional court proceedings. And if you've heard about impartial hearings or administrative reviews, this is a form of due process. Mediation is a form of ADR as a due process. Most often, it saves quite a bit of money in terms of attorney's fees and things like that aren't necessarily needed. and speed settlement. So over several sessions or one session, you can come to an agreement rather than waiting for your date in court or your impartial hearing date. We joke that you can mediate while you wait if you have an impartial hearing or a administrative review or a court proceeding. So it's a great way to develop creative solutions, longer lasting outcomes, greater satisfaction, and improved relationships, which especially for the disability community, improving relationships between service providers and clients is really, really important. So this is just a snapshot of ADR. Next slide, please. So we work really closely with the Unified Court System, the Office of ADR, that runs or oversees the Community Dispute Resolution Centers program that was established in 1981 by Article 21A of the New York State Judiciary Law to provide community dispute resolution services. So this is just expresses that New York State recognized the need for community dispute resolution services within every community and every county in New York State. So all of our centers serve all the communities in New York State, offering community dispute resolution services. And this office also oversees the training and experience requirements set by Part 146 of the Rules of the Chief Administrative Judge. So it is a very, all of the mediators must meet those requirements, so it is a quality process. Next slide. And then these are we call them the CDRCs. I'm sure you all have quite a bit of acronyms depending on the programs you navigate and things like that. So our centers, they're all outlined by certain colors. And I know Central New York has quite a few different centers. So depending on where you are, these are centers in.
And pretty soon we're going to have an interactive map. So you'll be able to hover on any part of that map and find your center with an address. So.
Nicole, at some point, could you send us the centers for Onondaga County, Oneida County,
Yes.
Madison, Cortland, our surrounding counties? Could you do that? Send it to me and I can, okay, thank you.
Yeah. And we could send this PowerPoint around as well, which I did include those counties in this PowerPoint, so. But Oneida and Onondaga have 2 different mediation centers. So, all right. Are we ready for the slide, Liz? Have we lost Liz? Did we lose Liz? Yeah, I guess we did.
I'm not seeing her, so hopefully
Okay.
she'll get back in. I'll look for her.
Okay, she must have froze. She'll come back in. Just to get to this, Liz put this up here. It's kind of a little diagram. The core values of mediation, which are actually on the next page, and the restorative practices, conflict quotient. Those are all things that you can get at a mediation center. A lot of times people will go to a mediation center and you might find, you might show up at a mediation center because you want to mediate a special ed situation at your school. They're not implementing the IEP correctly. And that's how you get there. But then you find out, oh, they can do conflict coaching. They can help work with people one-to-one on things that they're having trouble with. Like if you're having a hard time with somebody else and you need to work it out, or how to deal with conflict. Like a lot of people don't know how to deal with conflict at all. They freeze up or they react a lot. So conflict coaching actually can teach people how to have conflict, how to resolve things and how not to overreact and how to work through problems. Restorative practices are more of a community-wide thing. Restorative practices might be between a community and the police. It might be between a school and parents. There are larger groups of people. Mediation centers can do very small groups, one-to-one. It could be mediations with two parties. It could be parent, child, school board people, or it could be whole groups. So big or small. Mediation is basically, especially at the mediation through our centers, really are trying to get people to the same table to have a conversation, especially people who have shut themselves down to communication or have gotten to a point where communication is broken down. Oh, Liz is back. So that's why we have, are you back?
I am. I just lost power. I don't know why. Of course. But thanks for thanks for going on, Nicole. So
We covered this page and we were kind of at what mediation is, if you want to discuss that.
sure. So as you can see, it's a neutral, focused between the parties. Really working to facilitate a meeting to express concerns and explore solutions, in terms of having each person actively participate in the process, be heard, and learn their different perspectives. We follow certain core values throughout the state, which include self-determination, confidentiality, impartiality, and equality process. So the mediator helps the parties communicate and understand each other. The focus is to reach an agreement that satisfies everyone's needs. The mediator doesn't push the parties to make a decision or to an agreement, and the mediator doesn't take a side and isn't a judge. So the mediator helps parties focus on the future and to make their own decisions. The outcome is ultimately decided by the parties, and the mediator helps the parties draft their agreement, which can be legally binding in some cases.
This is all part of self-advocacy, encouraging people to learn how to speak for themselves, to speak up, and learning for parents to advocate for, to be able to advocate for their child too. So.
Just as we said before, these are the standards that we follow, and mediation is a really empowering tool for you to be involved in the process and to be the judge of your own outcome, and to help create better and stronger relationships with service providers, so each side understands where the other is coming from, and really getting to each other's needs and limitations in some cases. Next slide.
And each mediator is a ton of training. They usually do 40 hours of training, and I know our special ed mediators have to do an ongoing training to stay current in order to be a mediator. So there's a lot of work. Most of our mediators are volunteer. They don't get paid. So they do this as a community service. So due process. You have rights as a parent, and I hope everyone in this group knows that, but not every parent does know that. That built into all the laws that created these 3 programs, there's rights involved for the participants and for the caregivers. So the 3 programs we help to run are the early intervention mediation, and then special education mediation, and access VR mediation, which you kind of went through. This is a very short list of what can be mediated. Depending on what age group you're working with, if it's mostly special education or if it's access VR, if you're working with older groups, it's going to be a different amount, but really ask. Almost anything can be mediated. So placement, classification, evaluation, outside evaluation, special services, occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, IEPs not being handled the way it was agreed upon. It's really,
And eligibility. So if you
long list, yeah.
Right. So if you're concerned that you're considered not eligible for a certain program, you can also go to mediation for that.
Yeah. There's sometimes a time period involved, but it's always worth asking because sometimes there's flexibility. I know with Access VR, sometimes there's flexibility. So if you have any questions about this, or if you have somebody you're thinking, hey, they might be eligible for mediation, ask. I would love to direct you in to the right place. So requesting mediation is very easy. Early intervention, it just requires the family to do a request in writing to their family service coordinator or the district manager. I would like to request a mediation for these reasons. My child needs more services, greater service frequency, whatever the need is, just put it in writing and they will start the process from there by reaching out to a mediation center, and the mediation center from there will set up the meeting with the two parties. So the mediation center will set up the meeting. They will, if it's a virtual meeting, send you the link, set up a time. And
it's convenient to the parties, so that's accessible and works based on scheduling. So and making sure that it's also in a neutral place. It's really important that both parties feel comfortable in terms of the mediation, and it's completely neutral and voluntary. So
even if you want to back out at the last minute, you wanted a special ed mediation, you get to the day of and you start to feel like maybe I don't want to do this, you can back out at any time. It has to be voluntary. Either side can back out. So special education mediation, you initiate the mediation by calling the mediation center. They will do an intake and then they will go through the same process by setting up the meeting at a mutually agreeable time and place and schedule a mediator. And Access VR, the difference is you do a VR 711 form and you send that into the Access VR district office or to their due process unit in Albany. And they will start that administrative review and basically refer you to a mediation. And each VR 711 is a hearing form, so you will be requested, you will have a hearing scheduled, but you can request a mediation, and if the mediation is successful, you don't have to do a hearing. So
so these are all the kind of the
those are all
procedures
the
and
ways
things
you
like
can
that.
start.
But if you contact your local center, they can help you through all these processes. And so we're just gonna go over a few of the Central New York ones, so that you have their contact information and based on what county.
May I ask a quick question?
Sure.
If either party can back out at the last minute, then you skip right to the hearing?
If
Mediation.
there's a hearing for Access VR,
If someone backs out of mediation,
Yes, you can go to a hearing instead. Yeah. Both parties need to be voluntary in terms of being at the mediation.
okay,
It can't be forced.
okay, thanks.
and that should be contacted Accord. I'm sorry about that. Didn't catch that.
Yeah.
But Accord is the Tioga Broom Mediation Center. And we've got the address there. We'll send around the PowerPoint.
Next slide, Nicole. Okay.
Empowered Pathways is Oneida and Madison.
So Utica area.
Catholic Charities Resolution Center covers.
They cover quite a bit.
The Community Dispute Resolution Center is Schuyler, Tompkins, and Shamong, which I said wrong, sorry. Center for Dispute Settlement, which is, I don't know, are anybody in this range of this part of the state?
We sometimes have folks from Cayuga County, because it's a neighboring county to Onondaga. So that one,
Okay.
hit a few people in the Auburn area. Yeah, but
And
this-
New Justice, which is Oswego, Onondaga, and Cortland.
And they have three different, some of the centers have several different offices depending on how many counties they serve. So that's their contact information. And also if you contact us, we'll directly connect you with the program coordinator for that type of case, and make sure that you get referred to the right folks. So I hope this is kind of just like a brief overview of who we are and what we do, but I hope that helped. Does anybody have any questions?
Hey, Lisa.
Hi. What I did New Justice Center dispute resolution when I was in college.
Okay.
Can anybody volunteer still? I mean, I'd be interested in volunteering as a mediator.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as long as you have taken a basic mediation training and you've gone through an apprenticeship, which means you've observed so many different cases, yeah, you're qualified to be a mediator. And each center kind of runs it slightly differently. So if you want to work with New Justice again, you can definitely re-engage. And a lot of the trainings now are being held virtually, which is a lot easier to do.
Yes.
I know the basic mediation training is, it is pretty extensive. I believe it's 4 days, but some people split it up over several weeks so that folks can attend.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and because
Their
I,
application online. I think New Justice is one of the centers that actually has the volunteer application on their website. But if you want, I can get back to you by email
Mhm.
and get you that information.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. And in terms of, in addition to mediation, I know my power shut off at the most inopportune time, but in addition to mediation, the centers offer, and I'm sure Nicole covered this, but conflict coaching. So, whether it's a parent, an advocate yourself, your partner, your family member, you can meet with a conflict coach to go over a conflict that you might be having through and really kind of work through how to navigate it through the lens of identity, emotion, and power. And especially when it comes to disabilities, I'm sure there's a lot to unpack there. So that's also, you could become a conflict coach if you're interested, or seek out those services. And similar to mediation as well.
Joe and Ro Vargo asked for 1 or 2 examples of mediation and outcome.
Great question. I have a really good one I love to use all the time. One of the most common ones that is used is custody and divorce. And so, for example, a little boy told his mom that he doesn't want to go to his dad's anymore. And she was concerned about his safety, what was going on. She didn't understand why. And the family ends up going to mediation, starts talking about all these different reasons. And they uncover that the little boy misses his dog. So that's a very simplified story, but it really kind of gets to the needs of the parties without, going through the court system and really, being combative. So that's like one example. And then Nicole, do you have a special education example?
I mean, I think the most common thing that ends up happening is like in special education, the IEP is not being interpreted by the school the way the parents thought it would be. They go to mediation, like say they're not getting the amount of services that they said they were going to offer in the IEP. They tried to talk to the school. School's not responding. They get to mediation and they're generally able to work out, and this is a generalized thing, but it happens several times a month, that they're able to come to an agreement and update the IEP so everybody comes to a plan that the school can enact and the parent is happy with. That happens. We probably get about 20 of those a month.
Right,
IEP is one of the biggest things that comes to mediation, but it can be placement, it could be classification, it could be need for an evaluation. The school might have a child in a classroom that the parent doesn't feel is appropriate. It's either too little or too much. Pretty much anything can go to a mediation. It could be something other than that. Or it could be communication with the school. If the school is not communicating and the parent is starting to have anxiety about the school not being communicative about what's going on in their special ed classroom, that can go to mediation.
Yeah, and Joe and Ro, that's exactly the types of issues that mediation can work through. And similar to conflict coaching, if you're really feeling stuck or frustrated, it's a way to feel heard and have your perspective shared and spoken through and come up with solutions. So I hope that helps. I'm trying to think.
I have a quick question about the types of services that you offer. You mentioned, Nicole, the 3 areas that you operate in. How are those chosen? Because as I think about Joe and Ro's question and think about the questions we get as an agency where mediation could be really helpful to both sides, a lot of those aren't necessarily covered in those 3 areas. So I'm curious where those areas came from and the opportunity to grow some of those opportunities.
Absolutely. So these are, the centers provide services beyond those 3 areas. We as a statewide association have contracts with the Department of Education, Department of Health, and Access VR with the Department of Education to handle the due process and case management pieces of that. But they're all mediated by centers. So beyond there are those aspects of due process for those 3 programs, but mediation, conflict coaching, restorative practices can be handled on any type of situation. The one concern that we do have is when there's safety is an issue or violence, those are issues that are reviewed at intake. So if there's a concern about that,
but I mean, there's programs for people leaving the correctional system. There's transition programs. Some centers have senior programs. Some programs have to do with women who have been in Empowered Pathways has programs for women who have been in abusive relationships or single parents. I think that there's a variety of programs throughout the state, depending on which center you're going to. I'm not sure if that is helpful.
And I also want to say the centers, this is the more of a disability focus that we're presenting on, but they support cases for small claims, tenant landlord issues, family disputes, neighbor disputes, business disputes such as we have an agriculture mediation program, so property disputes or USDA classifications.
Employer.
Do you have to have supports for employers?
Yes, yes, we do. So for labor is one of them in terms of really any type of labor issue.
Well, not necessarily mediating, but more training of staff to deal with conflict. Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, our centers do that as well. Yep.
They do group conflict coaching, training. Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, and great, de-escalation and self-regulation tools as well. And conflict coaching is great too, as as a service as well. But yeah, we have several different centers that offer those types of trainings to employers. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we're getting really busy. We have a conference coming up that will be virtual on the 9th and the 10th. So if you're interested in a range of dispute resolution topics, you can reach out to us. But I hope there's there's a lot that we cover, and it's hard to do within several slides, but we can give you some information, our information, as well as the Unified Court System Office of ADR as well. They have quite more information in terms of their court programs and the centers.
Liz, be sure to pass along the conference coming up. I'd like to share that out. If you
Oh,
would do
great,
that,
yeah.
that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, we would love to have that. One of them, one of the sessions is on youth dialogue. So I'll just mention quickly that we have an AmeriCorps program that members are placed within schools and working with youth in terms of developing conflict resolution skills, communication, de-escalation, self-regulation, and really, getting better skills in terms of navigating conflict with each other, and building stronger relationships. So I'll definitely share. We'll come up with a few things to share with you, and feel free to send questions our way.
And also, Deborah, should I send all this information to you for you to distribute, or is there another point person I should send this to?
Yeah, sure, you can send it to me.
Okay.
And, thank you, Nicole and Liz. I mean, this was extremely helpful. And I'm sure, if we have more questions, we'll come back in touch with both of you. But
And at least for
definitely
my 3
appreciate it.
programs, it's free. So it's not a hard sell. It's just getting the word out that it exists, and then you can use it.
No, I totally agree with you. But no.
It's one aspect. Yeah, that's state funded by a state dollar. So, yeah, we're happy to support you all and happy to have this as a resource. Because as we mentioned earlier, there's no shortage of conflict. So,
Absolutely right.
everybody could learn some dispute resolution skills.
So yes, definitely send, the presentation and any information on the conference, and then, I'll get it out to the rest of the team. But
Wonderful.
Thank you again. Anybody
Thank
else have any
you.
questions before we let them go? Nope. Okay, thanks again.
All right, thank you so much and have a great rest of your meeting.
You too, or have a good day. Take care.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Thanks. So now the next bit of our meeting, I think Matt and Bruce are just going to give us some updates on what's been going on in the state.
Yeah, so I think, Bruce, I have some systems updates and a few other things, but I know the group is interested in hearing about some things happening at EFR. If you wanted to share what details you can at this point about what's happening.
Sure, yeah. So I think what you're referring to is our merge with Onondaga Community Living. So Exceptional Family Resources is merging with Onondaga Community Living. And for the purpose of brevity, I'll keep it short, but I'm happy to answer any questions that people have. So I started talking with Dan Kelly, the executive director at OCL, in November of 2019 about a possible merge. We are 2 organizations that provide just community-based services, community hab, employment, respite, self-direction services. We don't do residential. We don't do certified day programs. So as we got to know each other, we realized that though we have very different personal styles, that we had very similar belief systems and missions. And as we looked at the 2 organizations, we started feeling more and more comfortable that there was definitely some opportunities to work together. So our board sent their board a letter back in, I think, January of 2020, saying we're interested in having a merge or discussing a merge or exploring a merge. They responded about 10 months later after doing some strategic planning that they would like to talk to us about it. We utilized the New York Council of Not-for-Profits, which is a consulting firm that helps not-for-profits, to help us go through a due process where we really did some research in regards to what do you believe in from a mission and vision standpoint? How are you doing financially? What are your policies and procedures? How do you treat your employees? And we found that over and over again, we were both very similar in our approach and how we did things. It really seemed like a natural fit. Financially, they're in a very good spot. Financially, EFR was in a very good spot. So it wasn't a matter of one agency needing to be merged or one agency looking to take over all the services in Onondaga. It really just was a matter of two organizations with the same belief system. So our board voted in the end of August that we wanted to go forward with a merge. Their board voted in the end of August that they wanted to go forward with a merge. Ultimately, what's going to happen is you can't merge until you get Attorney General approval. So starting January 1st, 2022, we are going to operate under one joint board of directors. So OCL will continue to exist in 2022 while we wait for approval from the Attorney General. And then by January 1st, 2023, OCL will merge completely into EFR. OCL will no longer exist, and EFR will take on all of their staff and all of their programs. And actually, technically, starting November 1st of 2021, so next week, we have a shared staffing agreement. So we're going to start to share different staff. Again, part of the reasoning was that we have very similar beliefs, but all of us, all organizations, I think, are having trouble finding and recruiting and retaining staff. And we thought that by merging together, that eventually we'll be able to get rid of some of the dollars, overlapping dollars that aren't focused on the people we support or our staff, which will make it more likely that we will be able to recruit and, more importantly, retain good employees. So that's what we're doing. But I'm happy to answer any questions if people have them. Our boards have decided that nobody's going to be losing their job because of this. So though it might be a little unusual in the merge world, we feel that all the staff from both organizations have experience and expertise that we want to continue to tap into. So we might be a little heavy in staff in the beginning, but at the same time, there's plenty of work for everyone to do right now as we figure everything out. And really our goal is not to do things the EFR way or the OCL way, but is to take the best from both organizations and have a better EFR when this is all said and done. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And that's actually a great segue into some news I wanted to share as well. One of the biggest things we've been talking about with this group, and Bruce just referenced it, was the continued struggle for staff. And Joe and Ro mentioned it in their comment as well. It has been a very difficult 18 months for staffing. We were near a crisis point pre-COVID, and now we're really in that crisis and being able to recruit staff. One thing that's happened that's we're hopeful that will help is through the American Rescue Plan that was signed back in March. The federal government is providing a 10% increase in Medicaid funding to home and community-based service providers, including those like EFR and Access CNY and others in the community. So that's a 10% increase in Medicaid funding. So that's being used in a lot of different ways, including for a lot of what's referred to as the O agencies. So the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, for substance abuse, for the Office of Mental Health, senior living as well. In terms of for the interest of this group, there's really three areas that are being targeted for those funds. Supporting and strengthening the direct care workforce is where the biggest amount is going to be spent. Over $1.2 billion will be spent to support the direct care workforce. And in terms of OPWD's piece of that is about $550 million. So, and I'm going to ask you not to quote me on any of these numbers because they continue to change. So the 10% increase in Medicaid funding is based on what New York State bills CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So just as I'm asking you not to quote me on numbers, you should also stop me when I say things that don't make sense or I use abbreviations that you're not familiar with, because this gets a little in the weeds, but I think it's important, especially for this group, to know about. So that 10% increase is actually based on services provided from April of this year through March of next year. So for instance, New York State just billed the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, and we had an increase in spending, which means that 10% match is going to continue to grow. So the numbers I'm using are actually given to us in July, but they're going to continue to increase. So when we say that there are $1.3 billion in funding for staffing, that number is going to continue to grow. So on the OPWDD side, there is two ways that these funds are going to be implemented, we believe. The first is based on a vaccine incentive, that staff who've chosen to get a vaccination will receive a bonus based on their vaccination status. We don't know the amount of what that will be, but there is approximately $68 million set aside for vaccine mandates for staff who've made that choice. The other, even bigger.
Just to be clear, Matt, that's for direct care staff only.
That is correct. So what we're looking at is what's called 200 level staff, right? That's what it looks like on our CFR. So anybody who provides direct care, and there is some advocacy around increasing and moving funding to other, not just direct care professionals. If you think about your maintenance staff, you think about
bus drivers, clinical staff.
Yep.
So every position in every agency gets put into one of 6 places, the 100 series through the 600 series. So 100 would be like custodians and maintenance guys, 200 would be DSPs, 300 is clinical staff, 400 tends to be sheltered workshop staff, 500 is program admin, 600 is agency admin. So this FMAP money that we're talking about, the federal Medicaid assistance percentage, right now is geared towards DSPs, which is a 200 series.
Yeah, and I know there is some advocacy as that number goes up to look at the 100 code. So those are your maintenance, your transportation staff,
Yep.
and the 300 code, the clinicians, to see if they can add that. So the first piece is that incentive bonus for getting vaccinated. Then the second part, which as of July was approaching $450 million, is a 20% increase in DSP compensation. And doing this, I don't think we know all the details of how this is going to be done, but they are looking at longevity as part of the structure to do that. So certainly while that would be amazing, and we think that's going to happen in the near future, the big concern then becomes we're providing short-term funding for staff that we want to keep long-term. So there'll be a lot of advocacy in the current budget year coming up to make sure that this 20% is not just a one-time thing, and that it is something we can do going forward. So I know I can share probably in future meetings some of those advocacy efforts that we're looking at as they're just starting to ramp up. But this is one-time funding to provide both vaccine bonus for staff and then a 20% increase in DSP compensation. Bruce, did you want to add anything on that front?
Yeah, just that, and this is stuff that I believe to be true. I'm obviously not in the room. I'm hearing, I hear from somebody who's heard from somebody who's heard from somebody. But so the 20% is based on your spending over how much your organization has spent on DSP wages over a period of time. I believe they're looking at 2019 dollars. So in theory, EFR and Access CNY would get a one-time payment of 20% of what we spent on DSP dollars in that year. And then what I've heard is that we would have until the end of 2023 to spend that money. So different agencies will do things differently, but to Matt's point, if you start increasing wages based on this one-time payment, if there's no advocacy for those dollars to stay in perpetuity, what happens when those dollars run out? And I'm sure, again, different organizations will treat those dollars differently. And it's also a situation where if you don't use the money, you lose the money. So if you decide as an organization not to spend that money on DSPs, it just goes back to New York State. It's not like the organization could spend it in another way. And there will certainly be some hard feelings between the DSPs where there is funding available and what are organizations going to do for the positions where there is no funding available.
Such as self-directed staff.
My understanding is self-directed staff are included in this and it won't impact your budget, but I'm struggling to figure out what mechanism that would be, how they would do that, Drew. So I'm not sure. I had a similar question. I'm told that funding will be available for those direct care staff and self-directed. However, that would mean budget amendments. And, again, I think the logistics of it are a difficult thing. So I have the same question. I'm interested to see where that plays out. I'm also talking about support brokers and finance staff and HR staff and FI staff who have all been there through the pandemic and have helped, and have provided important necessary services, just not direct services. How do you look at them and say, well, you're not getting more money when the DSPs are?
Right.
And, we'll figure it out, but it makes things a little bit difficult. Certainly appreciative of the money, would never turn it down, but there's always something.
Yeah, and we're having the same struggle because we also offer mental health services, and the funding that OMH is getting is pennies to what OPWDD is getting. So our concern is we're going to have staff who are going to want to move over to the OPWD side and cause some staffing issues in our mental health programs, which we have the same issues right now on that side of the agency as we do with our OPWDD services.
Mhm. Well, and I know this isn't the forum for this, but I just don't see how self-direction is sustainable when if you can't put any more money in the budget. I mean, because my son's not going to change and he's not going to get better. So
Right.
It's just frustrating, but
Drew, I wouldn't panic just yet about that. It wouldn't be, I know, but
I'm just frustrated.
and I don't blame, look, the people on the self-directed side are frustrated that they can't find staff. The people on the traditional side are frustrated that they can't find staff. And this isn't something that's, I just spent an hour on a presentation about the 4.1 million people who used to work who aren't working anymore, and where have they gone and what are they doing?
Right.
This is something that's happening statewide for every service. So, I can appreciate the additional money, and I think that'll help us retain some staff, but I don't think that's the only solution. I think we have to figure out some other things out as well.
Just got to keep showing up and figure it out.
Joe and Ro, I'm going to try to unmute you. I don't know if your mic's working so you can ask your question. I can't unmute you, so that's not going to help. But I'll read your question. There, I think I've got you guys now.
Yeah. Again, so the point being is it's wonderful for retention, and increase the value of that workplace, whatever. But I don't know what the latest numbers are. It was, unfilled service hours, whatever the vacancy of service hours, whatever the right term is, before the pandemic was not good. How much of this can be directed or will be directed to trying to recruit so that the existing employees, can be compensated, will be compensated, and will be retained, but that is only a small portion of the larger issue of staffing.
I think, Joe, and I would say it's hard to answer that question until you know the details of how the money, right? So what I know is OPWDD has asked the federal government for these funds, and that the federal government has responded verbally favorably for those funds, but nothing has come in writing for those in regards to an approval, nor do I know how OPWDD will ultimately roll it out and what rules they're going to place on it. So in an ideal world, they give organizations flexibility, and I can promise staff a 10% bonus every December as long as they stay with us, and use that as a recruitment tool. In the worst world, they say you have 20%, you have to spend it all in the next 6 weeks, and it just goes to staff who are already there, and it doesn't help me recruit at all. But I'm hopeful that there are a lot of players at the table who understand the big picture and are going to give us a few years to spend this money, so then I can use it as a mechanism to increase the wage, to draw potential new candidates into the field. But until I know what those details are, I can't say how I'm going to spend it, because I don't know.
And I can say,
I think everything Matt and I are saying right now is what we believe to be true at this moment, and we're waiting for more details.
yeah, and for us at Access CNY, we've done a mix of recruitment bonuses, retention bonuses, some based on longevity, some based on this, some based on that. And I'll be honest, none of them have really moved the needle too much. I think just in the last month, we've had more applications than we did in the first 9 months of the year. So as much as I don't have data that says it was the enhanced unemployment, the timing does match up with that. And we are seeing more people coming to our orientation, more people showing up for interviews as well. So hopefully that will lead to increasing those service hours. So the funding for staff is great, but the other funding that is in this enhanced funding that's coming to OPWDD is in a couple of different areas as well, including increasing capacity of programs. It's going to allow us to try new things. Quite frankly, there hasn't been money for innovation and system transformation in a long time. So there's, I think, 43 different proposals of how you can change services and kind of help increase supports for individuals. So I think there's a lot of opportunities with just not all the details are there for that yet.
And I know some of those they're specifically looking at residential and how can residential services be provided in a way that's different than they're being provided now. And also, I think there's some money in there for agencies who no longer want to provide or want to have an option to center-based day have programs. You know, what's a better way to support people other than putting them on a bus and driving them to a program at the age of 75?
Yeah, and that's what we saw that when our day habs had to shut down. There are people who've chosen not to go back and prefer to receive those types of services in their home. They don't, just like me, they don't want to get up at 7 in the morning to go to do a program necessarily. So remaining person-centered and being able to deliver those services in a flexible way in a location that makes the most sense for them. So there's, you know, last year at this time, if we were to meet, it felt like the sky was falling. And I think now we feel like there's opportunities that we never thought would be available. And it's a short window that we have, but we have the opportunity to do some really unique and innovative things that we haven't been able to do in the past, and hopefully support our staff to do them, because we can't do anything if we don't have the staffing. Go ahead, Deb.
Where do you typically recruit people from, like the DSPs, especially now?
I will say we have tried just about everything and are open to suggestions of new things to try. We're about to launch a fairly large marketing campaign, which will be mostly focused on recruiting staff. When I say we've tried literally everything, the only thing we haven't tried is one of those big wavy men out in front of our building. We're close to being there. I mean, we're not far from that, but we've tried just about everything, new job boards. And we tried something new, and I can't remember the name of what we tried through. I think it was Job Target, something we tried, and we are seeing some results there. But again, it's timed with an increase in applications and the wind down of enhanced unemployment. So it's hard to say which one is moving the needle, but probably a combination of both. Bruce, have you guys tried anything?
No, I would say similar things, right? We've tried online, we've tried in person, we try. You know, we have probably the most luck with referrals from either families or people that already work for us. And so we're consistently increasing our referral bonus. But, you know, when I started in this field, I made double of what the minimum wage was. Now, I realize that was, you know, 35 years ago, but it was still, it was double the minimum wage. And, you know, now a lot of agencies are scraping right along the minimum wage. I know at EFR, we're $3 above it, but still it's just $3 above it. It's not double the minimum wage. And with all the rules and regulations that go with us versus the rules and regulations that go with working at, you know, the burn dairy, you can understand why some people might be hesitant to get into the field. We raised our starting salaries by $1 in June, and we saw a doubling of our applications. So our minimum starting salary is $16.50. But, you know, on the other side of that, we did have some self-direction families come to us and say, we're pretty frustrated that you're raising your salaries because it's making it more difficult for me to personally recruit. So it's you know, we're always trying to walk that balance.
Thanks.
Deb, have you heard anything downstate? I'm on a different group and I don't want to jump too far off topic, but families are getting notices that they need to start making other plans. They're closing state-operated day habs. They're going down to 2 days a week permanently. So I heard that in another group, but I didn't know if you heard anything down your way. And the other thing is, out of the loop, do we have a new commissioner? Does anybody know what's going on with that?
What
do you know, Matt? Spell it.
I'll take the second question.
Okay.
We do not have a new commissioner, but the commissioner we did have is no longer. He left maybe on his own accord, but probably not really. So right now there is not a commissioner. The commissioner, probably the acting commissioner, is not technically his title, is the second in command, which is Roger Bearden. I can't remember his exact title, but he presented at a conference I was at this week about kind of things happening in the system. My initial impression of him, and we've had the chance to meet with him before, he's definitely a more welcoming presence, I think, than the previous commissioner. One of the things that stood out about the previous commissioner at a conference where he spoke was basically, he said his job was to put funds in different directions. Like, he gets a pot of money, he decides the directions that they go. This commissioner was a little more open to the idea of advocating for increased funding, but doing it, through the budget process that they have to do in the state, which is sort of ramping up now. So he was a little more open to looking at increasing funding for services. Bruce, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. Again, it's not people I'm normally sitting in a room with, but that's the impression I get from my peers in the field as well. And I haven't heard anything about state-operated day habs closing. That's the first I'm hearing of that.
What I've heard about program closures is a lot of relocations for residential, where you can't staff a house. So if you have a vacancy at another house, starting to move residents from one house to another to accommodate the staffing needs. So we have heard that that's happening, and I think
It's been in the newspaper. It's tragic.
Yeah, and I think we shared a story on this group's Facebook page recently of that happening. I think it was a state-operated facility, maybe in the Mohawk Valley somewhere. So there are difficult decisions that are having to be made because of the lack of staffing.
Which makes me think that the forums we participated in, are they, kicked to the curb? Do they have any meeting?
So that came up at the conference this week, the 507 plan, which is the 5-year comprehensive plan that OPWDD is supposed to put out. They've not done one in quite some time. Members of this group sat on the information sessions and provided feedback to the commissioner. And I'll let Drew speak for herself, and Karen, who was the other person who spoke, did not get a warm feeling from the commissioner that he was really listening. But now that now that there's a new commissioner, I'm not sure what that process is going to look like. Originally, they were going to present the 507 plan to the legislature on, I think, November 1st. With a new commissioner coming in a new direction, I'm sure that's on hold. So I'm not really sure the timing of what any of that would look like. I will say again, though, I do feel more positive than I have in a while about the direction of OPWDD, but we'll have to see if that comes to fruition.
All right, Matt. I'm going to hang on to that.
Trying to give you some hope, Drew. And just my last update, and then we can ask any final questions, is at the conference I was at, which is the Cerebral Palsy Associations of New York State, so we're similar to the ARCs, but we're a statewide association. And at that event, they gave Senator Mannion the Legislator of the Year award, which was really great. He was very well received. And as he was introduced, they also mentioned this is an award they usually give out, because we usually don't have people on our side in a way that Senator Mannion has been. And the coolest thing about him receiving that award is they had a video. And this group, our meeting with Senator Mannion that we had last winter, was in their video honoring him. They showed and had a nice pull of his video from that, and all of us listening intently to the changes he was hoping to make. So I thought, I've asked for that video, so I'll share it back with the group just so you can see how famous we all are.
That's good to hear.
Line up for those autographs. Yeah, and I know one of the things is, since Frank, went back so late to Dayhab, I want to say probably almost once a week, they have gotten a call the morning of from Collins, and he was unable to attend. So half the time I'm scurrying the 6 miles up the road to go get him, so he's not sitting in an empty house with one staff doing absolutely nothing. So it's still a real problem. You know, it really is an issue. So it's concerning. Its quality of life during COVID stunk, and now it still stinks. So it's just, it's really frustrating. You want your best for your kids, and now that he's healthy and able to get out and do things, he's just stuck. He's just stuck doing nothing. And they're all doing their best, but it's frustrating. He should be out enjoying his life and doing what he wants. So it's tough. So yeah, we're ready to go after him, Matt. You just give me the number. Just kidding.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm well rested for my vacation. Let's go.
You look like you got a nice color.
Yeah, it was really hot down there. I don't know if anybody's been to Mexico. It was super hot. But it was interesting. A lot of the restaurants, even within our 5-star resort, were closed. And same thing, Mexico doesn't have any workers either. So it's not really, unique to our states. And, most of those, expensive resorts are in a hugely, it was like, on the outskirts of something that if you've ever driven through Harlem, the Bronx, it's, they're in pretty heavy poverty areas. Looks even different than the Caribbean. It looks just like kind of the stuff you see on TV. Really intense poverty and, a lot of violence. So, they can't get people to work either. So it's crazy. It's just crazy. The dollar now is 19, $1 American dollar is 19, the ratio. So they still can't get people to work. So it's nuts. So that's my tidbit.
Well, thanks for sharing it. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining. Go ahead, sorry.
Am I unmuted? I found today's meeting very interesting, and I'm glad I was part of it. I like the sound of having more money, but I'm also kind of discouraged and overwhelmed that we don't know more about it, that some people may spend it, may not spend it. And I'm sorry to say, but I've come to not to trust the system. So I feel that the people that work with my daughter are overwhelmed with all kinds of new regulations and, paperwork and iPad work, and a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there isn't going to help. So, but I do appreciate people working on this. And
just to be clear, I do think everyone's going to spend it. I just don't know how much flexibility different organizations will have to spend it in a way that makes sense for them or for their employees.
Yeah. Okay. Because someone did say, I thought I heard said and they may not get it spent in that amount of time or something, which
if EFR was given $75,000 and we only spent 74 of it, then the $1,000 has to go back.
Which is always the case
Yeah.
with grants and stuff. Yeah.
And I think there will be an attestation and other documentation that will have to accompany the how that money is spent. So I think it'll be looked at with quite a bit of oversight, which is my hope, because you're right. There's an attestation is great, but there are still people who, if an agency is in deep trouble, might find other ways that could use that money, which is not the intent at all.
So I think, Matt, as you or Bruce or Paul get more updates, you can certainly share it with us, or share it with the leadership team, and then we'll send out any information to the broader group. And our next meeting isn't until December, but until that time, we'll certainly keep in touch. And if there's any questions, just send it to the Central New York DAG email, and we'll definitely get back to you. But I think we can sign off now. It was nice seeing everybody, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.